big news of the day for most people, Dave, is the release of the Seahawks schedule. It's out there, and there's some interesting moments on it, most notably, and I know as a guy like you that loves preseason football.
Yes, I do.
You love it.
We could spend an entire 10 minutes talking about the preseason.
I know listeners would love that, breaking down the preseason schedule. But
I think we did that a couple of years ago. It didn't go over well.
Yeah, it was poorly received. But this is interesting that they open against Pete Carroll and the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, it seems like they play the Raiders every year in preseason. But
proximity.
Yeah, but now there's an added interest because the former head coach is there. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Pete kind of broke the news this morning on Brock and Salk, so that was kind of funny. Pete doing, like, oh, sorry, was I not supposed to say that? But anyway, yeah, it's every year it used to be San Francisco, that we would play when we weren't in the same division. So, yeah, it doesn't make it's not like super mystifying. We've been to Kansas City in the preseason, but they're playing here. And then, at Green Bay again, which maybe I can go out there and figure out what drew 750,000 people over the draft weekend. But yeah, so there's your preseason.
Yeah, there's some interesting takeaways though outside of the intrigue of facing Pete Carroll and the Raiders to open preseason football. You open the regular season at home against the San Francisco 49ers. Right out of the gate, you go up against your hated division rival, and you close the season with the 49ers. It's the first game, and it's the last game of the season. At home to open, on the road in San Francisco to close. So that was the first thing that stands out.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is just that where's San Francisco going to be? I mean, it looked for a while there like they were, and I would say this from the Seahawks perspective, right up to the point where that second game occurred. I mean, they got killed in that first matchup last year, which was that, a Sunday night or a Thursday night? But yeah, it just looked like that was a lopsided series, and they go back down and beat them down there, and now they have some guys to sign, and there's kind of some interesting things going on financially with that organization, and I'm just curious if they're going to be able to be that team that kind of has they've dominated the Seahawks at times. So I'm curious to see, what kind of a team. And as you mentioned, the whole season is sandwiched by those two matchups.
Yeah, so for those that haven't seen the schedule yet, I'll do the rundown here. So you open the preseason with the Raiders at home. You got the Chiefs at home, and then you're on the road against Green Bay to wrap up the preseason. That's your schedule there. And then you open the season September 7th at home with the San Francisco 49ers. Then you've got a road game going up against DK Metcalf and the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mason Rudolph. I don't know I don't know. Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? We don't know who's going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but you face them in week 2. So some interesting matchups right out of the gate. That one's Sunday, September 14th. Then you're at home with the New Orleans Saints. And then you've got your first primetime game, and that's Thursday night football on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. Then you follow that Sunday, the following Sunday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then you're on the road against Jacksonville. Then you've got a Monday night game. So you got 4 primetime games. The second primetime game is a home game, Monday Night Football against the Houston Texans. So that's pretty cool. We'll see C.J. Stroud and the crew come into Lumen Field, see what they're all about this year. Then you got the bye week. This feels like a good spot for the bye. It's not too early. I tend to like them later. I don't know how the players feel, but just as a fan, I'm thinking I sort of like after they've had a number of games under their belt, they really need a break. So I don't know. Do you like it in this spot, or would you like to see it a little later?
Well, no, I think it's fine. It just seems to me like the bye week every year works out. It's like, oh, we got a guy that could use one more week's rest, and it's in week 4, and then he can come back in week 5, and so I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a time looking back where like, wow, it was rough with the bye week, but because there's always guys getting hurt, and you always need extra time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably pretty safe right there in the middle. If you ask 90% of coaches, I think, in the NFL would say, yeah, make it somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, October 26th is the bye week. So then they come back November 2nd on the road against the Washington Commanders, followed by a home game against the Cardinals. Then you're back on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. Then you've got another road game against Mike's beloved Tennessee Titans, who have how many former Seahawks on that roster right now?
Whew, at least a baker's dozen. I mean, I think there are literally 6 or 7 on there.
It's
It'll be a
amazing.
fun reunion.
Okay, that's like a half a baker's dozen. But
Well,
anyways.
You know, half a baker's dozen. You're right. It's at least half a baker's dozen.
By the way, that Commanders game after the bye week is Sunday Night Football. So
Yeah, and
that's another primetime game.
a lot of that that whole team is just littered with ex-Seahawks. I mean, you've got
The Titans?
yeah. I'm talking about the Commanders.
Oh,
Yeah, you got Bobby Wagner re-signed there, I believe, for
yeah.
a pretty reasonable amount. Then you've got a couple of guys that now work there, Scott Fitterer, and I think who's the other one? There's another executive, but also coaches like their head coach, obviously. So yeah, that'll be kind of an interesting one. I've never been to Washington to that stadium, and not that anybody cares about that, but I will be checking my box there. And then
Don't sell the audience short. They're very happy that you're going to finally be able to
Sure
go
they
watch
are.
the Commanders in their building.
absolutely sure they are. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to be in that stadium and everything. And there's going to be a lot of connections there before. They always do that. There's always a segment in the media book that they put out before the games, and it's like, okay, these guys were here, cross path with this guy, and there's going to be a lot of names.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've got primetime games back to back. They got a bye week in between them, but the 2 games that you play, your final game before the bye is the Houston Texans. That's Monday Night Football here in Seattle. Bye week, then on the road against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football. So first half of the season, roughly that first half, you've got 3 primetime games.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then after that, again, Cardinals at home on November 9th. Then you're on the road for 2 weeks in a row. Rams, followed by the Tennessee Titans. And then you've got the Minnesota Vikings at home. So we'll see Sam Darnold go up against his former team in the Minnesota Vikings on November 30th. Then you're on the road against the Falcons, December 7th. December 14th, Colts come to town. And then your final primetime game is the Los Angeles Rams coming to town Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, and that may be a very telling game, depending on how they develop. But I feel like the Rams are always going to be sort of a thorn in their side. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and then you've got to close it out. Final 2 games of the season, both on the road. Now, date and time says to be determined. So
Right.
we'll see what happens with that. But they're both road games. So second to the last game on the road against the Carolina Panthers. And then, as we said, you open the season with the Niners at home. You close the season with the 49ers on the road.
Yeah.
So what's grabbing you here besides the primetime games? They've got, I don't know if people still will lean into the 10 a.m. thing. That's been killed, right? We don't talk about that anymore.
It's a great point. I mean, no, really. I mean, we used to talk about that, and it was a big deal. And I remember people writing articles. I mean, this was as much as, 8 to 10 years ago. And
I hated that.
yeah,
I hated that.
Well,
It was such an excuse. And I
Yeah.
remember clear as day talking to you about it before we were even doing a show together. And I think we were doing something on the air. And you're like, look, I just knew what game time was. It didn't matter where we were at. I never felt different. I didn't feel like, it's taking me a quarter to really get my energy up here. I don't feel right. And we had somebody text in and go, Dave doesn't understand what's happening with his body. I'm like, well, between the 2 of you, one of you has played at that level on the road, and the other guy is you texting. So I'm gonna lean toward the guy that actually lived it, did it, traveled, played at different times, and I'm sure maybe everybody's unique. Maybe there were some players that did feel that way, but you talked about it many, many times. Yeah, the 10 a.m. thing is not a thing.
You know what, though? If they did text that in now, I would say, yeah, they're right, because I don't know what's going on with my body at this age. But, yeah, I mean, I just remember thinking, like, I don't even know what time it is back home. I can't do the math, okay? I mean, it didn't really resonate with me. But people have said, I mean, look, why was Pete Carroll he made such a big deal about that? I think Mike is much more businesslike, and does everything. But if you look, like, number one, you go on the plane, there's these little placards that whenever you're flying more than, a couple hours, it's like, here's how to hydrate. Don't sleep on the plane. Wait till you get there. I mean, all kinds of different little things. So yeah, physiologically that can, and I think I just remember thinking at some point, lots of people were doing, all of these studies on and looking at the records and things like that about, what happens in these games where they're having to travel east and all that, and it just became all of a sudden not a thing. And remember, Pete had that ridiculous record where it was like
He was crushing 10 a.m. games.
Yeah, it was like 7-2, and then the next year it was like 6-2 or something like that. So, yeah, they figured that part out, and so yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, just because it's not a thing anymore. Nobody talks about it or it being a disadvantage. So, yeah, and I'm looking at the game at Carolina. It seemed like for a while there we were going to Carolina a lot, or we played them a lot. They used to be a team, during the run that the Seahawks had up until like 16, 17. It just seemed like, the big Cam Newton matchup and everything. But that'll be interesting to go back out there with a former coach in charge out there, former Seahawk coach. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And just to me, the bookend San Francisco, that one, that those two games I think are going to be really interesting, just to see where the Seahawks are. And I think this year it might be the tougher challenge might be the Rams, just based on what we saw last year. So yeah, those stand out to me. But other than that, we just went to Atlanta last year, played the Vikings at home. Those two are pretty familiar. Got the Indianapolis Colts. Are you a fan of them too, Mike? I believe you lived in Indianapolis at one point.
That's a Titans rival, so I'm not a fan of
Okay,
that.
you're not. All right.
The one team I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, but also, I think the DK one, I mean, there's so many, we know this from this show, that there's a ton of people that hate DK, and then there's a lot of people that have defended him, and I think it'll be an interesting matchup, and see if he gets in a fight with any of our defensive backs or anything like that. And,
Who would it be? Spoon?
Yeah, maybe.
He would be my first thought, just because he's so vocal.
That might be the worst matchup as far as size, and they're not in the same weight class.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
That wouldn't be a fair fight. But just in terms of a dust up, like
Yeah.
I could just see Spoon barking at him and DK barking right back. And
Yeah,
I don't know. Does Reek talk much?
I don't know. Yeah, he doesn't seem to. But yeah, it's kind of funny that Spoon, he doesn't seem like the fighting type, but he is somebody that can annoy you. But let's not forget that, like, Spoon's pretty physical, man. You saw him knock some people out, and he's a hard tackler, and I don't see him backing down to anyone. But yeah, that'll be something we'll probably get into before that matchup.
What if
who's going to fight DK?
Yeah, what if he busts one, man, for some 70-yard touchdown grab, just blows by everybody in the secondary, and all the people that said, he's a diva, they're going to be texting in, I can't believe we let that guy go.
That's right. We're going to have to check some history of some of the texters.
Guaranteed you're going to see it.
You're going to see people, I hate him, he sucks. Oh, look at him. Why'd we? Yeah, it'll definitely be that.
First text will come from Mike Salk. I never liked the idea of letting that guy go.
Yeah.
I always wanted him to stay here.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting test, right? I mean, right out of the gates. I have no idea who's going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And by the way, you guys can text in 866-979-3776. Weigh in on the schedule. What do you like? What don't you like? Are you fearful of 10 a.m. games? Do you like that they've got 4 primetime games? And again, right in the middle of the season, they're kind of sandwiched the primetime games. You've got October 20th is a Sunday or a Monday night game here in Seattle. You got a bye week, and then you come back for a primetime game, Sunday night football on the road against the Washington Commanders. So I thought that was a pretty interesting aspect, along with the 49ers bookending the season. You open at home with the Niners. You close the season on the road with the Niners. But what else is standing out to you? You like the schedule. You don't like it. 10 a.m. games. You're fearful. What's on your mind, Seahawks fans? 866-979-3776, powered by Mac and Jack's Brewing Company, or was it? I'm sorry, that's not the case anymore. But looking at are there any of these teams outside of their division, looking at like the Texans, looking at the Jags, looking at even Tampa Bay, the Titans? Is there a team you're looking forward to seeing that we don't see that often?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Colts is kind of interesting. I mean, we haven't played them in a while. It was a few years ago. That was the one where our receiver that got the concussion on the sidelines, trying to remember his name.
D. Eskridge?
Eskridge, yeah. And I can't remember if I think we lost that game, but yeah, that's always kind of an interesting one. But
I have to say, I am kind of curious to see the Titans, not because of Lefko, but just to see what does Cam Ward look like.
Right.
What does he look like? Is he going to be the answer there? And obviously see some former Seahawks out there, but I'm curious to see the #1 overall pick. How's he looking at that point of the season? Because you'll be past the halfway point of the season, assuming he's healthy. He's got time under his belt, so you'll start to get a sense of what kind of quarterback he is. Mm-hmm. So that one kind of stands out to me a little bit.
Yeah, a couple interesting ones that I would bring up. New Orleans, because you've got that entire offensive staff here now, and whether or not their defense is going to be able to maybe give Kubiak a little bit of trouble, kind of knowing and being familiar.
And who's their quarterback going to be?
Yeah,
because Carr just retired.
Right.
You got Radler, you got Hayner, and you got Shuck.
Yeah, they just drafted Shuck.
Don't you believe they got to bring in a veteran?
Yeah,
somebody that's gonna that
would be two teams that we need to in Pittsburgh.
The other team. And that's back-to-back weeks. So you got Pittsburgh as of now. We don't know who their quarterback is, and then that's followed by the Saints here in Seattle. As of now, I don't know if any of those three are going to be the ones starting. I feel like they don't want to throw the young kid in there right out of the gate. I don't. Yeah. The other guys aren't that experienced, so I don't know. That's a weird situation. That doesn't feel like a great situation.
Yeah, and then the other one that I was looking at was certainly Tennessee, just because of the ex-Seahawks down there. But I was going to say Minnesota coming here. Is C.J. McCarthy going to be there? I'm very curious to see, just because the things that you hear about him. He didn't play
J.J. McCarthy.
I'm sorry, J.J. You didn't play a lick last year, right?
Yeah.
And so, but yet when you talk to executives around the league, they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's no way Minnesota's going to trade that guy away." I'm like, "Really? That guy? I mean, what have we seen? What is it?" And you hear really good things about him, but that'll be an interesting one. Playing, like you said before, against Sam Darnold's old team. Did you get a chance to talk to Sam Darnold the other day?
Oh yeah. I spent a fair amount of time talking to him. Good dude.
Yeah. It's amazing that you guys decided to have that party while I was gone.
Yeah, it was all under our control, too.
Mm-hmm.
I said,
yeah, apparently it was.
Yeah, they called me and said, when should we have this party? I said, when is Dave going to be gone?
Look at Dave's
Let's do
vacation.
it that day. Dave's on vacation, so we had that party with Sam Darnold and Schneider and Mike McDonald, and then we had Dylan Moore up in the booth. We got it all.
Yeah, what the heck is going on?
We couldn't quite get Cal Raleigh up here. That would have been the perfect trifecta, but didn't happen. But you guys can tell, somebody said the schedule looks really soft, 206. The schedule looks really soft. I'm seeing at the very least 13 wins for the Hawks. At the least.
Whoa.
That's lowballing. They might go undefeated, I think the 206 feels.
Right. Well, good for them. They're excited.
And then 509 said, who the hell is C.J. McCarthy?
Yeah. You know what I meant.
Yeah, I know.
I get him and C.J. Stroud mixed up, who we also will see. And I think
prime time game, yeah.
That's Monday night game. I think that one will be very interesting. That's a good team. I felt like they should have gone further than they did, and they've got a well-built team. I think D'Amico Ryans is one of the better head coaches in the league, and he's another defensive guy, much like Mike McDonald. So, yeah, that will be an interesting one.
Yeah.
Mike, are you a big fan of Houston as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you lived there.
Yeah.
As he knocks over his water bottle.
I've never lived in Houston.
You never did?
No.
But you lived in Texas, so it just...
So does that mean I like the Cowboys too?
No.
Well, it wouldn't be surprising.
By the way,
you would like
though,
the best team. Whoever's got the better record.
So the Cowboys have 4 Thursday primetime games. They're playing on both Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's kind of weird. Yeah.
Well, that's what you get for being America's team.
Do they have Monday night games or Sunday night? Or they're just doing...
I don't know. They made a note they had a lot of Thursdays, I would assume. But yeah, they're playing the Chiefs on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, 4 primetime games is about right. And the other thing that happened while you were gone, Dave, is they unleashed the international schedule, and to my delight, the Seahawks were not on it. I know you were on the other side of that, wanting to go to London or wherever the game was going to be, but I as a fan, I didn't want that.
You want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning? I can't see why.
Well, there was that part of it, but these players, Dave, they don't know what it's doing to their body.
Yeah,
they don't know.
That's right.
Ask the texters; they'll tell you.
No, it's so weird. I never held that in any kind of regard whatsoever. I don't remember. You're young, and also you're an ass kicker, right?
Yeah.
Not anymore. Not anymore. But back then, yes. I mean, you just, okay, game time, let's go. So anyway, yeah, but I thought it was interesting you brought that up just because it's been since you and I have been doing, I don't know if we were doing the same show together, but I just remember at one point talking, endlessly about the schedule, and that was the first thing that you looked for. How many East Coast games?
Yeah.
It was kind of like a panic, right?
It always felt like such an excuse to me, though. Yeah, they
Yeah.
lost some game, but you lost 1 p.m. games too. So is that
Right.
a body clock thing? I mean, some of those games you lost, it felt like an excuse to chalk it up. Well, they're East Coast time, their body's not used to it. That's why they lost. No.
Yeah. Well, and here's another
you got
thing.
beat.
How about you're down on the field warming up for the game before the 10 a.m. start, and you
Yeah.
hit somebody in the head? You're awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that never made any sense to me. But it just, whenever this day came around, and so if you want to, I mean, we have a couple of TBDs, but there's at Atlanta is a 10 a.m. game.
So we'll see Michael Penix presumably in that game.
Right. Yep. I'll be interested to see that. And then you've got the Mike's beloved Titans, 10 a.m.
Here's something weird, actually. I didn't notice till some texters pointed this out. So that Monday night game against the Texans is at 7 o'clock and on ESPN Plus. So that's kind of
What?
strange. It has been relegated to not
ESPN
exactly
Plus.
prime time. Yeah.
Well,
That's not the funnest.
Is that one of those goofy 2 games in one night?
Maybe it is.
Is that what's going
That's
on?
a late start. That's a 10 p.m. Eastern time kick.
Yeah,
That's
and it's
7
on-
o'clock here.
it is. Yeah. How
And
about
it's on the ESPN Plus?
at
Wow.
Arizona Prime Video? It's your favorite, right? You like that
No,
one?
I don't like anything that I have
Don't
to
like that
log
one.
on to watch it.
And also
I want to hit the on button, Dave, and then punch
I-
in the channel number, and I'm off.
I hear you, brother. I hear you. And then the other one, luckily is a home Prime Video, Los Angeles, the Rams on December 18th. That's also a Prime Video, but you don't have to worry about that because
Yeah.
you're going to be watching it in person.
ESPN Plus. I didn't even notice that. Wow.